The New York Islanders are now 7 points out of a playoff spot with 25 games to go and 5 or 6 teams to pass. We all know what has to be done, but will Lou Lamoriello do it? We've got that and a lot more coming up on today's Locked On Islanders podcast.
Your Locked On Islanders, your daily podcast on the New York Islanders. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome, everybody, to the Thursday edition of the Locked On Islanders podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I want to thank everyone who makes Locked On Islanders your first listen every day. Don't forget to subscribe on YouTube or wherever you listen to podcasts so you get new episodes as soon as they drop. I'm Gil Martin. I've been covering the Islanders for almost 2 decades, and I wrote the book Ice Wars on the history of the Islanders' rivalry with the Rangers. Great to have you here to talk a little Islanders hockey. And I've got to say, this is going to be an important show. We're going to talk about what needs to be done, some of the injured players who are returning, and we'll preview tonight's big game against the Boston Bruins. But let's start with what has to happen. And I don't think there's much doubt left at this point. You look at the standings, and there is just no way to hide where we're at. The New York Islanders are at NHL 500 after 57 games. 25, 25, and 7. Yeah, that means they're 25 and 32, but they got loser points in 7 of those losses, so they're at NHL 500. They have to pass 6 teams to get to a playoff spot, and they have 25 games to make up those 7 points and pass 6 teams. That is a very tall order. And yeah, they may have a game in hand or some cases even 2 on some of those teams, but you probably need to get to 92, 93 points to make the playoffs. So you need, let's say, 35 points in 25 games. And the Islanders, they have not proven themselves throughout the course of the season to be consistent enough to do that. Yes, they're capable of going on those 7-game, little streaks or a 5-1-1 streak. We've seen that this year. We've seen it last year. We've seen it the year before. But they are also usually following up those hot streaks with an embarrassing slump. And we're seeing that now too. The Islanders had a 7-game winning streak and then lost their last 2 games before 4 Nations and lost their first 2 games after 4 Nations. So it's a 7-game winning streak followed by a 4-game losing streak. And that 4-game losing streak is still ongoing. We're not done with it yet. Hopefully it ends tonight. But, it's just clear that this team is not good enough to be dominant over the last 25 games, get that 35 points that they need minimum, and then hope that 7 or 8 other teams aren't at least equal to or better than they are. It's just not realistic. What else is not realistic? Extending guys like Kyle Palmieri and Brock Nelson. At some point, management has to understand this team, and everydayers, you've heard me say it before, this team needs to get younger, faster, and more skilled. This is not a horrible hockey team. They are in the muddy middle. But the way you get out of the muddy middle is you have to change the core of the team. You've got the cap going up. You've got an opportunity with some of these players who are on expiring contracts this year and next year to really shake things up and make some moves You've got a prospect pool that is better than it was a year ago, but still not particularly good, ranked roughly 25th in the league after being ranked dead last a year ago. But all the players that are considered the Islanders' best prospects are 2 or 3 years away at the earliest. And guess what? In 2 or 3 years, Brock Nelson will be 36 or 37. Kyle Palmieri, 35 or 36. Diminishing returns. Anders Lee, diminishing returns. Ryan Pollock, Adam Pelech. By the time 3 years from now comes up, Scott Mayfield, diminishing returns. If you want to take advantage of some of the guys who you have who are talented and you want to build around, whether it's Bo Horvat or Mathew Barzal or Noah Dobson, whether he stays or goes is an open question. You've got to change up the core here. And with the cap in existence, being a hockey GM is a lot about asset management. You have got to take what you've got and make the most of it at the best value. And Lou Lamoriello has not done a good job of that. Rumors abounded a year or two ago. He was offered a first-round pick for J.G. Pageau. Turned it down. Can't keep doing that. Can't keep doing that because guess what? Going forward, you're not going to get as big a haul for J.G. Pageau. I don't think you'll get a first-round pick for him now. Brock Nelson, his value will never be higher than it's going to be at the trade deadline this year, and you can't afford to lose another asset like Nelson or like John Tavares several years before for nothing. So if you can't sign Brock Nelson to an extension, you've got to trade him. You are not going to hold on to an aging second line center to try to chase 8th place and hope for a miracle. This team needs to be younger, faster, and more skilled. And I'll take it a step further. After the game on Tuesday, where the Islanders were embarrassed 5-1, it is frustrating for fans to hear the players say things like, we were the better team, we just didn't get the bounces, we outplayed them, etc., etc. Maybe these are the things you guys need to tell yourself to keep your confidence up. But you know what? At this point in time, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. When you're 2 points out of a playoff spot and there's 35 games to go, you could take moral victories. You could say, hey, you know what? If we keep doing what we're doing, we'll win a lot of games. We'll be fine. We'll be in that playoff hunt. Not now. Now, when you're 7 points out with 25 games to go and 6 or 7 teams that you need to pass just to get in, and there's a couple of teams right behind you who are also you still need to stay ahead of to get in, and that just puts you in, one of the wild card spots. So you face Toronto or Florida or Washington in the first round. It's like horseshoes and hand grenades. This is neither of those things. Close doesn't get it. Outplaying them doesn't do anything. Either you got the 2 points or you didn't. And you know what? The fact that the Islanders outplayed, and for those of you on audio, I just did air quotes, but the fact that the Islanders outplayed the Rangers, and in some respects they did, but the fact that they feel like they outplayed them, but they still couldn't even get close in this game is an indictment of this team, because it means they don't have the finishers to convert. When you outshoot a team by like 2-1 and you only score 1 goal and you give up 5, that means you're not finishing. That means that maybe the quality of your shots isn't good enough. And it also means that, yeah, you're not giving up a lot of shots, but boy, the shots you're giving up, they're their high danger shots, their breakdowns, their fundamental mistakes that you made that allowed those deflections or screens or just left a player open in a high danger area where they could finish. You may have been the better team for parts of the game, but you weren't good enough to take advantage of that fact. And it doesn't bother me if that happens once in a while. But with this Islanders team, we have seen it happen time after time after time, game after game after game, and it hasn't changed. It's the same old song. And you know what? If you keep bringing back the same cast of characters, the same roster, as much as we like them as players and as people, you're going to get the same results. In fact, the results will likely get worse as these guys get older. So if Lou Lamoriello can't see that it's time to retool, then it's on ownership to move on from Lou Lamoriello. But there is no doubt at this point where the Islanders probably have less than a 20% chance of even squeaking into the playoffs that a retool is not just necessary, but it's overdue. And as much as Lou believes in this core and wants to keep his guys together, if he doesn't realize that this core needs to be shaken up, then he's not the right man for the job anymore. It is time to sell at the trade deadline. And even another 7-game winning streak doesn't even guarantee that this team will be in the playoffs. It is time to sell. And if you don't, if you let Brock Nelson go for nothing, or you sign him to a 3 or 4 year contract that keeps him on the island until he's collecting hockey Social Security, that is just bad management, bad asset management, bad player management, and it doesn't help this team. So what's it going to be? Do we sink deeper into the morass of the muddy middle? Or do we start to retool and take one step back, perhaps, to take 2 steps forward? We have seen shrewd general managers in Washington and in New Jersey just this last year have teams that were not in the playoffs and turn them around in one off season. The Islanders, with the unrestricted free agents they have and some of the players they can move at the deadline, are in a position to do something similar. But it's going to take work, and it's going to take a GM who knows what needs to be done and does it. Let's see what happens. All right, more to get to on today's show. Some roster moves made by the Islanders on Wednesday. We will talk about that, what it means, plus we'll have a full preview of tonight's game against the Bruins in Boston. And for our Islanders birthday of the day, we have got a forward who was with the Islanders for 2.5 seasons in the late 70s, but just missed being on the Stanley Cup Dynasty teams. Let's see if you can guess who this player is. We've got all that and more coming up next on today's Locked On Islanders podcast. Today's episode is brought to you by Trade Coffee. If you're like me, your mornings have to start with a good cup of coffee, but I got tired of settling for grocery store brands that just weren't cutting it. That's why I turned to Trade, and let me tell you, this coffee is next level. Trade is the #1 specialty coffee marketplace in the U.S., bringing you fresh coffee from over 50 of the country's top roasters. Their expert have taste tested thousands of coffees, curating over 450 amazing roasts. Whether you're new to coffee or know exactly what you like, they'll handpick the perfect match for you. I took their quick quiz, and in under a minute, they matched me with a roast that was fresh, smelled incredible, and tasted even better. My first bag was a game changer. It had such a smooth, rich flavor, and I could actually taste the difference from my usual coffee. Right now, Trade is exclusively offering our listeners 40% off of your first order at drinktrade.com/lockedonnhl. That's drinktrade, TRADE.com/lockedonnhl for 40% off your first order. Drinktrade.com/lockedonnhl. So the Islanders made some moves on Wednesday. And, every day, as you may remember, Noah Dobson was eligible to come back against the Rangers, but apparently he just wasn't quite ready. And as a result, the Islanders did not activate him. So what ends up happening? Now they have activated him off LTIR, and they have announced that he is going to be back and play tonight in Boston against the Bruins. Dobson has missed 11 games right now. Patrick Waugh addressed the media after practice on Wednesday, said he's been working really hard in practice, so I'm not very nervous to have him back in. What I want to see is him just controlling the puck, jumping in on the rush, defending well, and doing the things that he's been doing very well since he's been there. Well, whether he's defended well this year, that's a question for a different day. But obviously, getting Dobson back in the lineup is something that this team was looking forward to. Now, they needed cap space to activate Dobson. So what did they do? They moved Mathew Barzal from the IR to the LTIR. That created the cap space. And by the way, a couple of days ago, Matt Martin was also transferred to IR. So he is no longer on the active roster, and we'll see what happens with that. Now, the expectation is that if Noah Dobson plays tonight, Scott Perunovich will likely be scratched, although that will be confirmed this morning when the Islanders have their morning skate in Boston. Also, in Wednesday's practice, Hudson Fasching was on the fourth line in practice with Kyle McLean and Mark Gatcomb. Waugh saying, we want energy. That's what we're looking for out of that line with McLean and Gatcomb. Fasching needs to go out there and finish his checks and show some physicality. So, what does that mean? It possibly means Pierre Engvall sits again. And, I would love to see Fasching recapture some of the strong play he had a couple of years ago. He hasn't been able to match it since. Hopefully we see more from him. I mean, right now, Hudson Fasching has played in 19 games. He has no goals, no assists, no points, and he is a -6. You got to get more out of Hudson Fasching going forward, and he has 11 hits in 19 games. Yeah, he's not playing a lot of minutes, but you need more. And again, getting back to asset management. Pierre Engvall, $3 million a year for a fourth-line guy who can't even stay in the lineup every day. He's played 40 out of 57 games and has a grand total of 4 goals and 8 points and is a -7. You got 5 more years after this year on his contract. Whether you trade him or buy him out or bury him in Bridgeport, again, you're not getting bang for your buck at $3 million a year for Pierre Engvall. And the fact that he has the 5 more years left after this year makes him almost impossible to trade. One other thing, Matt Martin being on IR almost certainly means that it will be impossible for Matty Martz to reach the 1,000 games played plateau for his career this season. The Islanders have, as I mentioned, 25 games left this season, and Matt Martin is still a little too far away from being able to get there. He needs 21 more games played to get to that 1,000 mark. So essentially, if he doesn't play every game after he gets activated off IR, and we don't know when that's going to be, he's not reaching 1,000 games. And he wasn't playing most games anyway when he was on the active roster. So if Matt Martin is going to be able to reach that plateau this year, he's got to be activated and all of a sudden play well enough to stay in the lineup. It's either going to happen next year, whether that's with the Islanders or with another team, or it's just not going to happen, and he's going to end up falling just short. I want to see Matt Martin get the milestone. If the Islanders keep losing another couple of games in a row, could you put him out there just to get him that milestone if he's healthy? Maybe, but realistically, doesn't look like it's going to happen. And I'm sorry to hear that, but you got to earn the ice time. And so far, Matt Martin just hasn't consistently played well enough to be out there every game. All right, we've got more to get to on today's show. Islanders, Bruins, can they end the 4-game losing streak and make a run at even keeping things interesting? Well, big game for those purposes tonight in Boston. We'll have a full preview, plus our Islanders birthday of the day coming up next on today's Locked On Islanders podcast. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. When the game tips off, the NBA action is just getting started, and there's no better place to get in on it than FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. With FanDuel, you could place live bets throughout the game, so even if you miss the opening tip-off or want to bet on a fourth-quarter comeback, you can stay in the action. And if you're looking for a bigger payout, you can even combine your live bets into a same-game parlay. I love using FanDuel's live betting feature because it keeps every moment of the game exciting. Whether I'm backing my team for a late game rally or picking a player to hit a clutch 3, I never feel like I missed my chance. Plus, the app is easy to use, and when you win, you get paid instantly. Right now, new FanDuel customers can get $150 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today. That's FanDuel.com for your shot at $150 in bonus bets. Make every moment more with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. Thank you for making Locked On Islanders your first listen today. For your second listen, check out the Locked On NHL podcast, bringing you the daily league-wide stories that matter with the local coverage you love from Locked On. Find Locked On NHL on YouTube or wherever you listen to podcasts. It's part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. And hey, don't forget, I also do host the Monday edition of Locked On NHL, and I co-host the Friday edition, so definitely check it out. Islanders, Bruins, tonight in Boston. Chances fading for both of these teams. You know, it's amazing. The Bruins right now are ahead of the Islanders in the standings. And, you know, they're 5 points ahead of the Islanders. Yeah, the Islanders have 2 games in hand. And people are already saying that the Bruins are going to be sellers at the deadline. Just saying, for your information. Bruins, well, they're slumping right now. Let there be no doubt about it. They have lost 4 games in a row, 3 of them against tough teams. They've lost to the Rangers, the Golden Knights, the Ducks, and the Maple Leafs, and all 4 of those losses have been by 1 goal, but still not good enough. Now, this is a team that has been disappointing this year. They're 23rd in goals scored, 24th in the league in goals against. Their power play is 30th at only 15.4% success rate, while their penalty kill is 25th at 75.5%. They are also, by the way, the most penalized team in the NHL. So the Islanders should get some power play chances, and if they do, they might even be able to take advantage, or at least a good team would be able to take advantage. You got The goaltending duo of Jeremy Swayman and Eunice Korpisalo, with Swayman being the starter. He's got a .302 goals against average and an .897 save percentage. The names at the top, well, they're still there. David Pastrnak, 30 goals already, 72 points. You still got your Brad Marchand, your Charlie McAvoy, but again, some of those names not there anymore. And this team, like a lot of teams, they've won cups. They've had their run, and now they need to be rebuilding or retooling. And I think they're kind of starting that process already. Smart, right? There's a time for everything. Now's the time to retool. The line combinations for the Bruins: Pavel Zacha, Morgan Geekie, and David Pastrnak are the top line. Elias Lindholm centers Brad Marchand and Charlie Coyle on the second unit. The third trio: Matthew Barzal, Trent Frederick, and Oliver Wahlstrom, the former Islander. He's on the third line on the right wing. John Beecher centers Cole Kopke and Mark Kastelek on the fourth line. On the blue line, Nikita Zadorov and Brandon Carlo are the top pair. Mason Laurie and Andrew Peak, the middle pair. Michael Callahan and ex-Islander Parker Wotherspoon are the third pairing. We mentioned Swayman and Korpisalo. On IR right now is Hampus Lindholm. Charlie McAvoy is listed as out. Trent Frederick, day to day. We'll see if Frederick is able to return, and if not, who fills in on the third line left wing. Islanders, again, with their hopes fading, you lose this game. I think even if there was just a little bit of doubt left, that doubt gets eliminated. Won't be easy to win in Boston, and we'll also, got to watch this. Does Scott Mayfield return to the lineup for the Islanders? Do the Islanders actually sit Scott Perunovich and have Noah Dobson in? And will Noah Dobson show a lot of rust? How many minutes can they count on him? A lot of questions we're going to get some answers to during tonight's game. Time now for our Islanders birthday of the day. And today is the 69th birthday of former Islanders forward Mike Kazicki. He was a second-round pick of the Islanders in 1976, also drafted by the New England Whalers of the WHA. Made his NHL debut with the Isles in 77-78, 13 goals, 42 points that year. Had a career-high 16 goals the following year and 34 points. Early in 79-80, he was traded to the Washington Capitals, later played for the Maple Leafs. Before the end of his NHL career, he did play in Switzerland to close out his pro hockey career. Played in 226 career NHL games, 42 goals, 122 points, 108 penalty minutes. Add 19 playoff games, all but 2 of those as an Islander, 2 goals, 8 points, all of them with the Islanders for Mike Kazicki. One of his better games as an Islander, well, how about April 8th, 1978? Islanders hosting the Rangers at the old barn. The goalies in this one: Wayne Thomas got the start for the Rangers. Chico Resch in between the pipes for the Islanders. And Mike Kazicki, our Islanders birthday of the day, got things started with his 12th goal of the year. Bobby Nystrom and Stefan Pearson with the assist. That makes it 1-0 Islanders. Islanders up 4-0 late in that first period. Kazicki sets up Nystrom for his 30th of the year. Jerry Hart got the other assist, and the Islanders led 5-0 after 1. In the second period, it is 6-0 Islanders, and Kazicki scores on the power play. Stefan Pearson and Bob Nystrom with the helpers. Islanders crush the Rangers 7-2. Mike Kazicki, our Islanders birthday of the day, 2 goals, 1 assist. He has a +3, and he scored his 2 goals on 4 shots on goal. Chico Resch, 26 saves. Wayne Thomas chased. John Davidson finishes up, but the Islanders crush the Rangers by a final score of 7-2. 2. I want to thank everyone who makes Locked On Islanders your first listen every day. Everydayers, we are back tomorrow. We'll have our key takeaways from tonight's game against the Bruins. We'll also preview Saturday afternoon's game at home against the Nashville Predators. So make sure you join us for that, because guess what? Barry Trotz is the GM in Nashville. Always great when he may be back in the building. If you have a question, a comment, maybe a topic you'd like us to discuss on a future episode, we'd love to hear from you. Email us at lockedonislanders@gmail.com. And if you leave your first name and where you're from, we're happy to mention you on the show when we discuss whatever's on your mind. You could follow the show on X at Locked On Isles, and you could follow me, Gil Martin, on X at Ice Wars, NYR, We'll keep you up to date on all things Islanders all year long, and I am live tweeting during nearly every Islanders home and road game, so join me for some instant insight and analysis, and it's great to talk Islanders hockey with you, game time or anytime. Have a great day, everybody. Stay safe, and of course, let's go Islanders.